decided to do this exhibition because Joe Colombo died very young, in the beginning of the 1970s. And he was a little forgotten in the 1970s and 80s, although he was one of the most important figures in design of the 60s. So we thought it might be good to inform about his work, about his personality, because he was very influential, and he is today still being rediscovered as a designer that has to offer a lot of inspiration for designers today. So that's why we wanted to show Colombo's complete work. He was a very interesting personality. Not only his work was important, but also his personality was part of his image, which today we think of when we talk about Joe Colombo. He was a big person, always well dressed, with a pipe in his mouth. He liked fast cars, skiing. He played jazz music, so he was a person that you might call a dandy of design, somebody who had a very sophisticated lifestyle. And I think it's important to consider this personality of Joe Colombo if you want to understand also his work as a designer. Colombo was born in a quite wealthy Milanese family. His family had a production site for electric cables. So I think a certain interest in technology was already in his family. But Colombo turned towards painting as a young man. With about 20, he started to study painting. He joined a group of painters that was called nuclear painting. So these young guys were painting in a way with very eruptive pictures. They were, maybe you would compare it to Jackson Pollock's painting, or to other artists of the time who painted in an abstract way, and so did these Milanese boys. But Colombo turned away from painting in the middle of the 1950s. He became more interested in architecture. He tried to establish himself as an architect, but this did not really work out. He didn't have the success he wished to have as an architect. He didn't succeed to realize his designs as an architect. And then at the end of the 1950s, he also had to take care of his father's company, because his father became sick and he died some years later. So there was an excursion in economy in Joe Colombo's career, but in the beginning of the 1960s, he discovered that he's not the right person to run his father's electric cable business. So he turned away from that. He found other people who took over the company, and then he finally decided to work as a designer, because I think in the profession of design he was able to combine his interest in technology with his artistic ideas, or with his ideas which were sometimes even utopian and very far ahead of his time. There was a whole discussion about nuclearism, about nuclear energy in the 50s, not only in Italy, but in all the artistic world, we have to say, because there was this big shock after the atomic bomb in Hiroshima, when the intellectuals were shown that the human race has been able to control a power which is uncontrollable. So they were confronting this possibility of destructing the whole world. And a lot of people said, after Hiroshima, nothing will be the same, because we have to face these incredible powers and the power that men have gained over nature. So not only these young painters from Italy were dealing with this, but also people like Robert Rauschenberg or Yves Klein were reflecting on these nuclear issues. Joe Colombo, as a painter, he wanted to make visible the basic energies of nature. So this is where this nuclear discussion comes in. He wanted to make research into the very inner structure of natural energies, and he wanted to make those visible in his paintings. And then he took similar reflections on these nuclear discussions, and he adapted this to architecture. And he said, well, if we are able to control nuclear power, we might as well reconceive completely our cities. We will be able to put the whole infrastructure under the earth, and the surface of the earth, we can use it for nice dwellings, to have a nice, like a new natural park, like a Garden Eden on the surface of the world, and all traffic, all the industrial production would be under the earth. So this was his nuclear city, which was on one hand only thinkable because endless power supply would be there, thanks to nuclear energy, but of course it also has something apocalyptic, because all the traffic, all the important systems are under the earth, so it has the aspect of hiding people under the earth. It was a very interesting but very utopian concept, of course. Colombo was absolutely fascinated with new technologies, especially the media, the audio-visual media, and he said that media would completely change people's lifestyles, and it would allow people to work at home, to work during traveling. I'm sure he would have had a laptop if it would have been invented. He even told one other designer one day that people might carry their telephones in their pockets one day, so he must have had this capability of thinking in the future and thinking about things that in that time were not really thinkable because they did not exist.